And right around that time, I was still I had the GT 750. I could ride that around a little bit. Um, and I guess I didn't really have a whole lot as far as street bikes are concerned, but I had the KZ 1000. And that kind of gave me a taste for the big, larger size uh, Kawasaki four-stroke, inline four motors. And um, and so at the time the fastest bike on the road was the Ninja ZX11, the 1100cc Ninja. And so I was kind of like keeping my eyes open for one of them. One came up in the newspaper, and I thought, and I went to go see the thing, and there was some custom work done, had some motor work done to it. He had a bigger sprocket on the front. No, no, smaller sprocket. Excuse me, smaller sprocket on the front, which quicker acceleration that way, and Muzzy exhaust, complete Muzzy exhaust, stage 3 jet kit. I think it was either bored or stroked out a little bit in the motor, and he had the rims powder coated like a kind of a fluorescent pinkish purple color, which wasn't overly nuts about that, but I thought, oh, okay. And real big black guy, real big bodybuilder, and he let me take it out, and I just drove it up the street, came back, and I said, yeah, it's really nice. And he said, do you want the bike? And I said, yeah, I'd like to buy it. And he said, it's yours. And I said, okay. And he said, you know why I'm going to sell it to you? He said, there's a lot of people that want this bike. He said, it's a real good price, and it was a very good price. He said, there's a lot of people that want the bike, but he said, you're the first guy that didn't beat this bike. And I said, well, it's not my bike. I'm not going to beat it. I'm not going to ride it hard or anything. It's not mine. And he said, bike's yours if you want it. He said, I got a lot of other people lined up before you, but he said, you want this motorcycle, it's yours. So it's like, well, okay, I'll take it. So here's a picture of my ZX11. It was a 1992, and there it is back there. There's the two frames yet. And there it is. And he actually put an alarm on it, which was kind of interesting. But a little tank cover thing there, tank bra or whatever I think they called them things. And there I am, back in the old days, before my beard. But that's the ZX11. Some pictures of it, again working on it, taking things apart, and making sure everything's functioning correctly and whatever else. There's the Muzzy exhaust down there. There I am over at my older sister and her husband's place, my brother-in-law. Took the bike over and showed it to them. And there we go. Another picture at my childhood home. And a couple more pictures here. Again, the ZX11. So I had it at the same time that I had the GT 750. There we go again. That was my younger sister's car there. It wasn't one of mine, but there it is again. And definitely have some stories on that bike. That was a really good machine, and took it on a lot of different rides and trips and things like that, and just really, really fast. I mean, now it's like they got all these new bikes out. The Hayabusa came out shortly after I had sold my Ninja there, my ZX11. But at the time, if you know anything about the late 80s, early 1990s, the ZX11 was pretty much the fast bike. I mean, Honda came out with the CBR 1100XX or something, the what was it, the Blackbird or something like that, whatever. And ZX11s just were the fastest bikes, and that one was definitely one of the fastest bikes in the area. I raced a lot of different people on that thing, cars and motorcycles included, and I had this thing that I would usually go at least 120 miles an hour whenever I took it out. And I just was always trying to push the envelope a little bit further each time I took the thing out. And I remember the one time there was a area in Strasbourg where the speed limit was 25 miles an hour, and I actually did 120 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. So 145 in a 25 zone. Didn't have many brains back then. And I'm going to show a little bit of some like Google map thing here of the area where I actually did a 175 miles an hour on that bike. Going down 372, I think it is. You go down this hill and then you go out onto the Norman Wood Bridge, which is about a mile long, if I remember correctly, and it's just straight as an arrow. And and you can really go and fast, and there's nobody going to pull out in front of you or anything else. And I remember that was right around the time my brother-in-law, he was behind me on his motorcycle, and I'm riding my Ninja, and I just really gunned it and got down on, laid down as much as I could on the tank to try to get my head below the windshield. And I'm just, really went, and basically I ran out of road. As far as I think it would have gone faster, maybe up to 200 miles an hour. But it was getting across there. I mean, it's kind of weird because a lot of the rocket bikes, you get them up to 150 miles an hour, they'll get there like that. But then when you start to go over 150 miles an hour, all the friction and the wind and everything else, it's like, it takes you can get up to 150 like that, and then it takes a lot longer to get to like higher speed. And I got up to 175 miles an hour, and I could see the end of the bridge was coming up. So I started trying to slow down, and it was just like, oh, okay. It's like really the forces and everything that are on you at that speed. It's pretty incredible. And so that was definitely an interesting experience. And but I had that thing for a while, and ended up selling it then, because I was in that phase of just buying and selling things. But another time I was up in northern Pennsylvania, and riding with my brother-in-law and a friend of his. A friend of his was actually a police officer. It's kind of funny. He had a Ninja 750R, and he was the lead bike, and then my brother-in-law, he had a Ninja, might have been his Ninja 900 at that point, and then me on my ZX11. And we're cruising along. We're going like just ridiculous fast up. We're doing like 120 or so usually on average going up the highway. And being led by a police officer, off-duty police officer, is kind of fun. But we're going up through the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon area, which is a lot of twisty, windy roads. And so the guy up front, his name was Wendell, and he goes into the corner. He goes, and he's going around through the corner, and I could just barely see when he was getting around the corner. I could see his brake light come on, and I thought, okay. And my brother-in-law, he's coming into the corner next, and I see, and I got a little bit closer, with him, and I could see he hit his brakes, and he kind of swerved erratically into the other lane. And so thankfully, I slowed down a little bit. I come into the corner, and there's this big porcupine on the road. I was like, whoa, okay, into the other lane quick. And but just riding just ridiculous, stupid times back in those years. And I'll say this: it was by the grace of God that I even survived in those years, all those years, my late teens and up through my 20s. I certainly rode in a way that I truly had no fear. And it's not good. The Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So I had a lot of things to learn. So we'll be getting into some of that more later. But this is kind of a funny picture. Another one of the vehicles I had back in those years. I had my ZX11, and then I bought this Corvette. It was a 1982 Corvette. And I had this 1984, I think it was, Mercury Lynx 4-cylinder. So I would drive this to work a lot of times when I didn't feel like taking the Corvette or my Ninja. But those were my three, these were my two speed vehicles back then. I was, had, I think, my three-wheeler back then, my Honda 200M, and it was, off and on with different bikes and stuff. But that was my main speed bike, my fast car, and my economy vehicle. And there's another picture of the three together. And it's kind of funny because there were times, my Mercury Lynx, the thing leaked oil like pretty bad, and it was a dog. The thing did not go fast at all. And I remember there were different times I'd go to leave for work in the morning. I'd start work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and worked 6 to 4, and And I remember I'd leave like, 5:30 or so in the morning, and sometimes I'd sleep in a little bit, and I'd be like, oh, I'll take the Ninja and I'll get there quicker, or the Corvette or whatever else. And I remember sometimes I'd wake up and I'd be like, okay, just kind of like getting up and things. I'd get in, go out, and I'd be like, oh, I'll take the Mercury Lynx, and I'd take off down the road. And I remember there was a couple times I'm driving, I'm like, man, something's wrong with the car. It's just like, it's not running right or something. It's going slow. And I'm like, oh wait, yeah, I'm in the Mercury Lynx, not driving a Corvette, or my Ninja. But the Corvette, I'll show you a couple pictures of this thing. Again, I was always trying to be practical, and I went to a dealership that my dad knew, and looking for like a Jeep or something like that or whatever else. And there's this Corvette sitting there. That's after I washed it. You can see the beads of water on the thing. And I remember there's this Corvette sitting there, and I'm looking at the different vehicles, trying to be practical. And there's the really neat body lines of those Corvettes of that year. And I'm like, how much is that Corvette over there? And can I test drive that? So I test drove it. I bought the Corvette for $5,000, which was actually a little bit less than some of the other vehicles I was looking at the time. It was my parents' car right there, but then that was my Corvette. And so a lot of fun. It was the year of the Corvette that was not the real good year. That was one of the years that they actually tried to be somewhat economical. The speedometer only went up to 85 miles an hour on that year Corvette. They actually stopped. They didn't make a Corvette in 1983. And another picture there. And of the three, kind of from behind there, there's the Ninja. But they had three different models of V8s in that year, 1982. They had and I don't remember the LS1 or whatever else, but they had a 305 V8 that year. Pretty bad. Then they had a 350 with like 200 horsepower, and then they had the 350 V8, small block V8, that had 300 or so horsepower. Well, I had the middle one. It was actually like 185 horsepower or something like that. So wasn't real fast, but it was a cool car. I had fun with it. Took it to a Corvette show up in Carlisle the one time, and just cruising around with it and everything. But I noticed that people treated me differently when I was in that Corvette. I'm a young guy and I'm driving this Corvette around, and people like, oh, a rich kid or something. I remember this one time, this guy got this brand new truck, and he pulls up beside me. He's like, oh man, is that your car? And I was like, yeah, it's my car. And he's like, oh wow, that's a cool car, man. It's a sweet Corvette you got there and everything. And he's like, man, it must be nice to have one of those. And I'm like looking at his new truck, and I said, what'd you pay for your truck? And he's like, oh, like $24,000. And I'm like, I paid $5,000 for this Corvette. I'm like, you could add like almost 5 of these things for what you paid for your truck. What do you mean it must be nice to have a Corvette? So, but I lost one of the spinners the one time on one of the wheels, a little, in the center of the wheel. I lost one of the spinners, and I found out how expensive replacement Corvette parts are. So, had that thing for a while, and again, got rid of it. Around that time, I decided I would buy a brand new Banshee. So here I am with my current jersey on, the AXO jersey, and there's my brand new 1997 Yamaha Banshee. So that was 3 years after my high school graduation, and it was all stock. There I am jumping it. Had a few small jumps around the property, nothing real huge or anything else. Again, some jumping. There it is. And there's the Banshee. All stock at that point in time. There I have it in there. That was, again, during the time I had my Fat Cat there. The Banshee. A little bit more riding shots. Some jumping. There you go. There's the infamous dual exhaust in the back. And one of the telltale marks of a Banshee owner. I'll show you a couple other pictures here quickly. One of the telltale marks of a Banshee owner is there's no reverse on these things. So you get in a spot that you need to back up. Well, here's your backup right there. Hop off, go around, grab onto the grab bar and pull it backwards. And of course, what happens when you do, you're pulling like this, and a lot of times you're kind of backing it up and things. And the exhaust pipes, being a two-stroke, they run, fairly dirty and things, but you get the two exhaust rings on your pant legs. So if you're loading it onto the truck and you forget yourself, you lean in like this, and it gets the two black rings on your pant legs. I used to always have people joke me about that. So I had that thing, and I had it for a little while, and again, I was just buying and selling vehicles, and pursuing some kind of happiness, some kind of purpose in life. And at that time, it was just vehicles, just one thrill after the next, and adrenaline rush, adrenaline rush. And I sold the thing, or so I thought, to some guys down in Philadelphia, and I went down there, and they had a cashier's check. And we can't come up and get it. Could you bring it down? Yeah, sure. We'll give you some extra money for gas. Yeah, okay. So I went down with my brother-in-law and my father. The three of us went down, and I'm thankful that they were with me. Some guys down there gave us this cashier's check, and we helped them load the Banshee into their truck or whatever. And thanks, okay, we went away. Turned out the cashier's check was completely forgery, and it fooled even my bank. Went in there, sold it for $4,500, and they said this cashier's check is only good for $450, up to $500. They said this thing's a forgery, and it had fooled. It went back to the original company. I'm saying it had fooled my local bank. Went back to the original company, and they said no, this is only good for $500. You were ripped off. You were taken. So called the police up down in Philadelphia and explained the thing, and the guy was just like, "Do you have insurance?" And I did at that point in time, and you have insurance? Yeah. And he's like, okay, do that. We're like, you're not going to investigate it? He was like, no, nope. A lot of the inner city, type of stuff, that's what they do. They understand that the police aren't going to go after them for a petty theft or whatever. Disgusting. So that was the second four-wheeler that I had lost due to stealing. The first one was I was not trying to sell it or anything at that point in time. The second one, I thought I had actually sold it, but weird situation. But around that time, my friend that I was hanging out with a lot, Keith Ekman, the one that I've mentioned in different studies or different things throughout this video, he was living Greenfield, Pennsylvania at the time, and there was an old Ford truck in his area there, and he was like, hey, you ought to check this thing out. It's kind of a cool one, it's an older one and stuff. So I went and said, yeah, I'll look at it. So we drove over there the one time, and it was a 1969 Ford F100 Ranger, which I'll show you the pictures here in just a minute. And so yeah, it looks pretty nice and everything. And so talking to the guy that owned it and everything else, and had a 390 big block in it, and so he was joking around with me, and he's like, he's like, hey, you like older trucks? We were talking, and he said, I bet you if you drive this thing, you're going to buy it. Kind of like that they said to me at B&B Yamaha with the Quad Racer 500, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. Drove it, and it had such an awesome sound to it, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy it. So again, another vehicle purchase, and there it is, my 69 Ranger with the 1997 Yamaha Banshee in the back. Just a couple pictures of it here to go through. Automatic transmission. I put the cover on the back there, the tonneau cover. I put the aftermarket wheels on it, and then the mirrors. I'll show you the original look here in just a couple minutes. There's the emblem on the front. It's actually a fairly rare truck. The F100 Rangers, there weren't that many. Just to show how big the motor was. Definitely a cool truck. Another picture of it. There's my friend Keith Ekman's. He had a 1952 Dodge in the background there that we were going to fix up. Another picture of the motor, 390 big block. A picture of the interior there. That was the horn on those older vehicles. And you can see the speedometer here. That'll be important later. You can see it goes to 85. You know, it goes like this over. It's not like a round speedometer. There again. There it is down at the Susquehanna River. The original paint collar. There I was crossing Peckway Creek campground. They had a Ford. I know it's a Ford truck, but you know, there's a Ford across there. You could drive across. Here's the original look of it when I first bought it. The old man looking truck, you know, with the white wall tires and the old hubcaps. There we go. Definitely a cool sounding truck though. Another picture of it. And another picture of it. And a couple stories from that thing. One of which was one of my most memorable experiences. I was coming home the one day from work and working at the boat place, building boats. And my brother-in-law, I saw him and he was heading to my parents' place and he had his Ninja 900. And so he's cruising along on his Ninja and we get down. There was a little bit of a straightaway on, I think it was 896, heading towards Peach Lane. And so he's cruising along and there was like 4 cars in front of him. So, you know, he gets to this straightaway and there's nobody coming, so he goes taking off out around all these people. And I'm behind him in my old 69 Ford. And so he takes off, you know, on his Ninja, and I took off, and I actually kept up with him. I mean, just pedal to the metal, I'm going. And the speedometer, you know, it's this long thing. It goes like this, you know. It goes over to 85, and it's going tick, 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 like this. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going over 85, I don't know. So we get back to my parents' place, pull in, and he goes, man, he goes, I can't believe you stayed with me. He's like, do you realize how fast you were going? No. He said, you were doing 120 miles an hour in that truck. So, pretty amazing. I didn't think that the thing could do that kind of speed, but neat old truck. Definitely a cool thing. I had that for a while, and then I ended up selling that. And again, it's trading off with all these different vehicles. Part of the reason I sold it is because it was not 4-wheel drive. So, looking around for, I always wanted a Jeep, and you know, like a CJ7 or a CJ5 back in those years, 1970s and early 1980s. And went to a dealership, and I said, do you have any Jeeps? And the guy's like, oh yeah, we got one over here. I looked over and I'm like, huh, not familiar with that model. But I decided to take it for a test drive, and I really liked it. Ended up buying the thing. It was a 1978 Jeep Wagoneer. Right there, you can see it. There's my old Ford. There's our old shed when I was starting to build on. This became my wood shop. Again, part of my working testimony there. Here it is, back in the woods when it was snowing. And just ultra reliable. The thing just ran perfectly. I remember when I got it, the windows, a lot of them, the seal was shot, and the moon roof or whatever up there was, the seal was shot. So I just took some black caulk and I caulked the windows around where the seal was, and I caulked the thing. It was not the nicest old Wagoneer. In the back, the rear quarter panel, it was rusted out on the inside, so I put expandable foam in there, and you know, I limped the thing along basically. The passenger side, down on the floor, there was a hole, a big old rust hole, and it was covered up with the carpet, and you know, whatever. And it was fine unless it was rainy out. Then the carpet would start getting wet there, and it was always like, hey, don't put your foot there. You know, don't put your foot too hard on that spot. You know, go down through to the highway. I mean, looking back at the stuff I used to drive and stuff I used to do is just crazy. And how God had mercy on me that whole time to keep me alive through all that stuff. God's just so good to me, but more on that later. But that thing too, the frame was rusted pretty badly. And I remember if you would pull on an incline, it would actually, I don't know if the frame would bend a little bit or what, but you couldn't get the rear doors open on that thing. I had to sit on a flat level area to get the back doors open. And the side door, you can't see it from the photos, but the side door was gray. The rest of it was dark green. The hood, I think, was pretty badly faded too, but the side door was gray. It was from another old Wagoneer, and it didn't shut quite right, unless, I mean, you really had to slam the thing and stuff. So I had driven it up to my buddy's cabin with my friend, and we're coming back, and I dropped him off and everything, and ran just perfect. I mean, the thing shifted. You could barely even hear it shift. It was just, transmission was so tight in that thing, and just a real good old vehicle. It was just a rust problem. So anyways, I drop him off, and he, shut the door, but not hard enough. So I'm cruising down the road, and the door just goes whoop and flies open and slams somebody's mailbox, and their mail just went shooting all over the road. So I kept driving, and eventually shut the door. It was bad. It was quite an adventure. But another time the brakes went out on that thing, so I limped it home and things, and had been driving up through the power line up in the mountains, and drove up through, I remember it was 6 inches of snow, not plowed or anything, steep hill. And that stupid thing, it had the quadra-track, so it was like all-time, all-wheel drive, like full-time four-wheel drive is what I was going to say. And the old Jeep quadra-track, and that thing just crawled right up that steep power line through unplowed snow. Incredible. It was just a really neat vehicle, and sold it to a family, and I heard that they had the thing for like a long time, and it just kept on running, and they just kind of patch it up, and the old Wagoneers were pretty neat. And then I ended up having another 1986 years after that. I don't have any photos of it, but I like old Wagoneers, but they're hard to find in good condition. More on that later. So, on to the next vehicle. And I decided I'd go kind of practical for a little while, so I bought this old 1985, I think it was, Chevy S10 pickup truck. Total bare bones. It was owned by an old pig farmer. It was a 4-speed. I mean, no options at all. It had an AM only radio in it, heat and defog, and that was it. And I mean, just the absolute most basic truck. 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. I built this little canoe rack here in the back for my canoe I had at the time. There's that. Here's another picture of it from behind. Another picture of it. And again, it was like this weird time of like going between really wild vehicles, fast vehicles, and then very practical vehicles. And it was just, I was all over the place. Had that for a while, and I started getting into logging right around that time period, and needed a more heavy-duty truck. So I got this thing, a Chevy pickup truck, a 3500. There was a 1-ton truck. Had a 454 big block in it, and it was formerly a PennDOT, a road crew truck, and then it was used by a nursery for a while, and then I bought it after that. And pretty good truck, pretty good power with that thing, and but just was absolutely terrible on gas. So had that thing right around the time I got saved, and so I was doing some tree work for people, and that's when I had my big chainsaw, the 394 XP. So that was kind of early when I first got into this whole ministry thing. But had that for a little while and sold it. I remember I sold it to a Mennonite guy in the area, and we're standing there talking about price, and he said, this is kind of an interesting situation. He said, you're praying to get a good deal, and I'm praying, you're praying to get a good price, and I'm praying to get a good deal. He's like, which prayer is God going to answer? And I was like, that's a good point. So, but now I'm going to transition over to digital pictures, and so I'll be putting these up on screen. So, be back in just a couple minutes. All right, now we're going to get into the kind of the digital era, going from the old print photos and stuff like that. And what happened is, right around the time I was in logging. Shortly thereafter is when I got saved, when the Lord saved me. Understood really what Christianity was all about and what it meant to be born again. And I was looking for something in my life that had meaning, and I found it. A personal relationship with Jesus Christ, outside of church buildings and going to church and being all the nice stuff that most people think religion is all about. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And I also talked about that in the other parts of my testimony. So you can watch those parts if you're curious as to what I mean by that. But I'd gone for a long time after my salvation. I went for a pretty long time with I had the Chevy, the black Chevy, and then I bought a 1994 Ford Ranger, just basic truck. I wanted to, four-wheel drive instead of the two-wheel drive black Chevy that I had. And so for a long time I didn't have anything. We had a Yamaha Grizzly 600 that we used to plow the lane, and I do firewood, hauling firewood around with that. But I don't really have any pictures. That was actually my dad's four-wheeler, so that was about the only thing, vehicle-wise, motorcycle ATV-wise, that I had. And so I was starting to think, I went through the time of studying the Bible and everything else, and I kind of was just like, with motorcycles. But I kind of missed it, and I thought, is it a sin for a Christian to have a motorcycle? Is this some kind of thing it's wrong? And it was like, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Talk about that later. I'm going to show you some scriptures on that. And so I was kind of talking it over with some of my buddies, saved, brethren and things. And the one said, hey, he was a delivery truck driver. He's like, hey, I saw a Suzuki DR650 dual sport, I saw one of these things down in New Holland area, and you got to go check it out. I can give you the phone number and stuff for the guy. And I was like, yeah, I'll go check it out. So I forget if I went down to check it out or actually drove down and saw it there. But checked it out, and it had been sitting for a while. The guy was from Colorado, and the bike was originally a California bike, and then he bought it from a guy in California living in Colorado, and then he brought it to Pennsylvania when he moved to Pennsylvania. And he had it for a little while. I guess he just kind of put it in storage when he moved. And he bought a Harley Davidson when he got here to Pennsylvania. So he had this DR650, and he was like, I just got to get rid of it and everything. So it had been wrecked. Bought a lot of wrecked things. And laid it over, and it was all scraped up. The plastics were scraped up, above the headlight. And he said it wasn't running very good either. So, okay. So I went and I rode it and everything, and I thought, this thing's pretty nice. It's got some, it's banged up a little bit, scraped up a little bit, and not running real great. But I thought, yes, not too bad. If you have a bike, it's not running good, it's going to be either, if it starts, well, it's probably not the spark plug. Could be if it's kind of fouled, it's going to run a little bit choppy and whatever. But usually, if it starts, it's not the plug. It's usually either going to be your carburetor or the air filter's clogged or something like this. So I thought, well, it's not going to be that big of a deal. If it's been sitting for a while, usually that's the carburetor. It's got some dirt down in the bowl of the carburetor. Something, the main jet's clogged or whatever. So, cool. So I bought it. And at the time, I'd always, I should explain something. In the past, when with motorcycles in Pennsylvania, you could just go into the state police place where they would do the driver safety test, and you'd say, I'd like a permit for a motorcycle, and they'd say, okay, what's your name, stuff. You show them your driver's license. They'd write you out a permit. It's good for 6 months, and there weren't any kind of laws about you have to be riding with somebody or whatever else. It's just you couldn't carry a passenger, which I never really did that much because just single guy and stuff, and I always like to go fast, and I didn't want some girlfriend on the back telling me slow down, so another issue. But I never got a driver's license, a motorcycle license. I just would always just buy these permits. Well, the laws changed over the years because it was 1990s when I basically gave up bikes, mid to late 1990s, and then it was about I don't even know, 2003, 2004, somewhere around there when I got back into motorcycling again. So now it was a thing where if you have a permit, well, you have to have an experienced rider beside you or, with you or whatever. And it was like, yeah, brother. So I thought I'm going to have to just get, bite the bullet, go in, do the motorcycle test. And then they changed that too. You had to like call and, set up like 6 months in advance or something, or a couple months in advance. It was ridiculous, which I did. But so I'll show you some pictures here of this DR650 and real nice bike. I put that Suzuki sticker above the headlight there to cover up all the scratches. But I put the, it had the bark busters on it there with the hand grip guards. In other words, I put a rear rack on it that I could haul some things around on the bike. That's basically all I did with it. And put just some stickers on it and fixed it up a little bit. But I get it back. I'm like, okay, let's get the thing running. So I take the carburetor apart, get it all out of there and everything, and take it apart, and it's just like crystal clean inside. Like, what in the world? And so, I'm looking at the thing, and I check the plugs. I checked a bunch of things, and the air cleaner's just clean, perfect, and everything. And I'm just scratching my head, going like, what in the world? And I went over every kind of thing I could try to figure with this thing, and I saw it had this like little box thing and all these hoses and everything. So I kind of looked it up, and it was like, oh, well, the California bikes have this smog thing, the smog control deal. So I was like, okay, well, that thing's kind of dumb. I wish that wasn't on there. But I started it up, and it's like island pretty rough and everything. And I'm looking at things, just trying to see do I have everything hooked up. And I look at this one pipe coming out of this little rubber hose coming out of this smog thing, and it's like wedged into this one spot. And I'm like, you know what, that hose looked like it's kind of pinched a little bit. So I just reached back and pulled it out from where I guess it must have got knocked back in there or something. Pulled it out, it opened up, and all of a sudden the bike's just like running perfect. Pull the pipe out. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It was a pinched, little smog pipe thing there. So bike ran great from then on. It was a lot of fun, driving around back roads in the area and stuff like that. I did get my motorcycle license on it, and I was sweating it because I'd heard different, nightmare stories. You get the wrong kind of a guy at the motorcycle driving course thing, and they're just like, can you do this? Can you do that? And all this stuff. And so I was a little bit panicked about going, and I had to wait like 3 months to go to do this test. So I go and I do this test, and this kind of big, heavy set, overweight guy, he comes out, and I could tell he's like kind of like, I don't really want to be out here, because it was kind of a little bit chilly that day. It was in kind of late fall when I got to do my test, and he comes out and he's got these 2 little orange cones, little rubber cones, and I'm looking at this motorcycle course thing, and there's all these different lines and all this stuff, and I'm like in my mind going, oh boy, what am I gonna have to do? And he sets these 2 cones down, and he goes, okay, get on your bike, ride down there to the end of the parking lot, come up here, and I want you to do 3 figure eights around these 2 cones, drive around like this, do 3 figure eights. So I'm like, okay. So get on the bike, cruise down, come up around 3 figure eights, Lord help me to do them perfectly. Didn't put my feet down or anything. And I stop, I go, okay, what's next? He goes, you passed. And I'm like, huh? And everybody I talk to, they're like, that's all you had to do, And I guess maybe he figured I'm on a dual sport, I'm going to be able to do any other test, But I was like, that's it? And he's like, yeah, you're done. Picks up the cones, walks back in, fills out the thing. Here you go. Congratulations. Here's your motorcycle license. So, yay. So I had that bike for a while, and really had some fun on it. It was really cool going up, some of the real steep hills and real twisty, turny types of things. It really, cornered good, had real good power, kind of a mid-range type of power, not real kind of low end, wasn't real great off-road, just that real good strong mid-range, real good for corners. Anyways, so had that thing for a little bit of time, and started thinking to myself, I'd like to get actually like a street bike. So I decided I'd check out on eBay, and I was looking at different bikes and stuff at the time, and this was early on in the years of my ministry, 2007, 2008, somewhere in there, and so might have even been a little bit later than that. I'm not sure, but no, you know what? I think it was actually a little bit later, probably about 2009, 2010 is when I had my DR650 Suzuki. So I get on eBay and I look, and there's this Honda Superhawk, 1998 Honda Superhawk, VTR 1000, the British call them Firestorms, and it's a V-twin, kind of like a Ducati almost. It's like Honda's Ducati, answer to the Ducati, not a full like fairinged, like rocket bike, but like you'll see pictures of it here. And I see the thing, and it's not inspected. It needed a little bit of work. Typical what I'd like to buy. And so I put a bid in on it, ended up winning the bike. So I'm like, oh, okay. Had sold my DR650 shortly before that. And no, I'm sorry, I didn't. I hadn't sold the DR650 yet. I still had the DR650. Excuse me. Yeah, and I won this Honda Superhawk. So I had my dad drive me up there in his car, and then I rode the bike back down, uninspected and everything. Not real bright, but I was riding it down. I had to transport it. I wouldn't have gotten in trouble for it. I just told the police officer, hey, taking it down to get it inspected. They give you some leeway on that. So took it down and just went over the bike. It needed some turn signals in the back. It just had the integrated turn signals in the tail light, and so I'll show you some pictures of it. Just absolutely beautiful machine. Really, really, really nice bike. I'll show you some pictures of the thing here. It was all stock when I bought it for the most part, and I put it had the little turn signals up front there, the little flush LED turn signals, and I put the Yoshimura slip-on exhaust on the thing. And this was money actually. I'd been given some inheritance money. I paid $2,500 for the bike, and had a Corbin seat on it. Had the solo seat, and you could take that little solo seat off on the back there, and then you could put a passenger on it. 13,000 miles on it. Just you can see these different pictures here. Those mirrors. The one time I was pushing it into the garage where I kept it, and my dad was helping me, and he kind of leaned a little bit funny on it, and I kind of moved the bike over, and it hit the one mirror and broke the one side mirror. So I replaced the mirrors, the stock mirrors, with these aftermarket ones that actually had turn signals in the mirrors. So that actually was, just made it more visible. It did have that little bit of a crack there, which I repaired as best I could. But a lot of these pictures are from when I had it for sale. I didn't have to jet it or anything, change the carburetor jetting or air filter or anything like that when I put the slip-on exhaust on it. There's the integrated tail light. I put the stock turn signals back on, kind of remounted them down a little bit further. But really, really cool bike. And I remember some of the fun stories on that thing. This one time I was riding, and a bunch of young guys got behind me, and they were pushing me a little bit, and I was just trying to do the speed limit, and they were kind of coming up behind me in a sport utility vehicle, and it was ticking me off because you don't tailgate a motorcycle. Okay, anything could run out in front of me, and I'm hitting my brakes, and they're just going to plow me over. So I came through this corner, got down, came through the corner, and then just took off, and I was in second, and the thing was just torque monster, and as I shifted into third, I kind of snapped it, and just as I was snapping it, it kind of dropped down a little bit. So where I snapped it, it was right at that little bit of a hill, and the thing just went and just did this huge wheelie, and I wasn't ready for it, and just scared me half to death. I wasn't trying to do it. I was just trying to get away from these two knuckleheads. So I did this huge wheelie, brought it back down and took off, and I thought they're probably thinking like I'm some professional racer or something like this. It's like, no, that's kind of a mistake. But fun bike. But I noticed that the main reason I got rid of it was because it was just, it was leading to a lot of pride, because it was a lot fast bike and everything else. And I'm saved now. I'm in ministry. This was a bike. Didn't cost me that much money. Just kind of a cheap thrill thing. And like I said, it was just some inheritance money that I'd gotten, and I thought, I'm just going to get something. I'm a single guy, whatever. And so I had the bike for a little while. Ended up selling it because I just thought, I can't. There were times I'd take it out, I'd ride, and I'd be trying to pray and and stuff, and talk to the Lord about different things, and it was just like this constant. Because I had a big thing back when I had my ZX11. I would like to hunt down guys with Harley Davidson motorcycles, because they're slow and everything, and I'd try to humiliate them with my Ninja, try to go real fast and just blow past them and stuff. And I found myself being tempted to do that again, because I just had an attitude against these tough guys, and stuff. But whatever. And I'm just like, what? I can't have this bike. I can't have this rocket bike. So decided to get rid of it, and as kind of like I'll amend my ways here, and I'll go the exact opposite of a Super Hawk. I'll go from really ripping fast bike to this bike. I'll stand over this way so you can be seeing the pictures and things. Yamaha TW200, and 1990 Yamaha TW200. Again, eBay find. I found the thing. I paid, I think, just under $1,000 for it, and it had been sitting for many years. It had been wrecked. You can see the clutch right there. The clutch lever up top is broken off. There's a better picture of that. The front brake there, lever was all bent up, twisted up. The throttle there, the grip, was all chewed up at the end where it had been wrecked pretty bad. Gas tank was dented in from the guy's knee that had wrecked it. It's a good deal there. The rear turn signal was all duct taped on. The left one the mount was kind of bent. 2,719 miles on it when I bought it. And so I basically fixed it all up, kind of restored it back to the way it was. I couldn't do all the work myself because it was pretty bad, and I took it to a local motorcycle repair guy, and he went over it and stuff. What I couldn't do, he did, and because he had some some of his tools and some of the things, like he had one of these tanks that you put a carburetor into, and it's like this, I forget how the thing works, like a kind of vibration or something, like a high vibration, and it'll knock all the dirt off of it. And he did that on the bike, and I put a plastic tank on there, a high capacity gas tank, and that thing could go 250 miles on one tank of gas. It got about 80 miles per gallon, so that part was really cool. And not a very fast bike. I put a smaller sprocket, smaller teeth on the back, so it increased the highway speed a little bit without sacrificing too much of the power of it. It's only a 200cc, so not very powerful. But it was a blast on back dirt roads and stuff like that. I had a lot of fun on it. But it was downright scary riding that thing. There's a picture of it with a little luggage box on the back. I could cruise around on that, do little errands and things on that bike. And so I was, doing little side jobs, some logging type of stuff at that point in time, firewood sales and whatever else, saving up a little bit of money just for whatever things, and so again, buying and selling motorcycles, buying a bike, fixing it, selling it, making a little bit of a profit on the side is what I was doing. And so again, on eBay, and I look, and there was a dealership actually down in the town where my sister and her husband live in West Virginia, and they had a bunch of older KLR 650s. At the time, it would have been, I think, 2011. 2011 at that point in time. And there's been a couple bikes that were always kind of on my mental list of I'd love to have one someday. And dual sports are always one of my favorites because it's half dirt, half street, So I always wanted a TW200. I had one, and it was a fun little bike, great fun. Still wish I actually had the thing. It was a really neat little bike, very, very good on gas. But it just wasn't strong enough on the highway. I mean, 60, 65 miles an hour. That was about it. And I had a guy actually tailgating me on that thing, and there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't get away from him, so it wasn't much fun. But so I was on eBay, and I saw they had these leftover 2009 Kawasaki KLR 650s, and I've talked about this bike in other studies, but I bought the thing, put a bid in on it. I won the bike, and it's brand new. It was a factory leftover, 2-year-old motorcycle, but brand new down at their dealership there. And so paid for the whole thing and everything else. And then we went down to see my sister and her husband, and I brought the bike back in the back of my pickup truck. And so this is before I got married. So here's some pictures of it. Right after I brought it home, stock bike. It was my first brand new motorcycle. Never had one before that. And just totally stock at that point in time. There's my truck in the background there. You can see with the bumper magnets on the back. And then there it is. I over the next couple of months or whatever else, again, some of the money that I had. I mean, we're not dealing with a lot of money here, okay? So just in case people out there, I know my enemies try to attack me on things. So, but just little bits here and there I'd put into the bike. I put a new seat on it. I put new LED tail light in the back that would flash rather than just come on and be on like that. I put the hard panniers on the back there, the big luggage things on the side. I put a GV luggage thing on the back. I put crash bars up front. I mean, I really had the thing decked out. Put a new windshield that was a lot higher for better, I wasn't getting hit by the wind. The stock windshield was not very high on them things. So I put a lot of different things into it. Put a GPS mount on it and stuff. I could run GPS on the thing, and just absolutely loved the bike. It was a really, really wonderful machine. And just it was kind of neat because it was like kind of the best of both worlds. The KLRs are very, they're bigger. They're the biggest of the 650s, at least in the past, And but it was a good combination of, it could go somewhat off-road, but not real great off-road. But it was very capable on the road. It was I'd take it on long rides and stuff like that. It was good, real comfortable. Just a real good bike. Really loved the bike. Enough speed that I get away from people that were being jerks to me or whatever else, but not so much speed that it went to my head and made me do stupid things. And I was on that bike the one day I was riding along, and I was just praying, and I was just saying, Lord, I just, all these years I've been single. I was 36 years old at the time. And I said, all these years I've been single, Lord, I really would love to get married. And at that time, the Lord spoke to me. And again, you watch my videos on what it means when the Lord speaks to you. And but the Lord told me that I was going to have a wife on, the back of that bike within a year. And it came to pass. Within a year, my wife, Catherine, I was taking her for rides on that bike. So, really neat. But I remember the very first time I took my wife for a ride, went out to Iowa and got her and brought her back and had the KLR 650, and I'm telling her, she's never on a motorcycle before. And so I'm like, oh, it's safe. I've been riding since I was 10 years old. You'll love it. It's going to be great and everything else. We get on the bike, and I couldn't go out the stone lane of the place where we were at the time. I had to go down through the woods. There was a back trail that went down through the woods, and it was kind of muddy that day. And I'm like, you'll be fine. We'll be fine. Let's go down through. And the tires on the KLRs aren't the best for off-road, but I thought that'd be okay. So we go down. I mean, we're like 50 feet down the trail, and I hit some mud and just totally laid the bike over. Just bam. Well, we weren't going fast or anything, but just boom, and, you know, we both go flipping off the bike and stuff, and like, so much for the, everything's great, you know, kind of trying to be a little bit prideful, you know, to my new wife here, and you know, I'm this great rider and everything else. So, but she laughed about it, and we still laugh about it today. And another time we were living up in, and this, you know, early on in our marriage, we had two vehicles. We had my pickup truck, and we had the KLR 650. So again, it wasn't like, oh cool, we got this cool bike and it's whatever else. We had two vehicles. You know, if the truck broke down, which it did sometimes, we would ride the motorcycle. And the one time we actually were moving from, we had moved up to northwestern Pennsylvania, and we were moving our stuff. We'd been there for a while, that whole debacle, working with the Baptist church up there. Left there, put the KLR 650 in a moving truck, packed a bunch of our stuff in, moved down, and then unloaded everything, and then rode the KLR 650 5 hours back up that night. And by the time we got back up there, it was like in the 30s out, you know, Fahrenheit, and it was, you know, just bone chilling cold, and we're just, you know, just riding that thing, and we made it. But man, that was a cold ride. And I've ridden in all kinds of, you know, weather and everything else year round. So, and there's actually my 94 Ford Ranger. That I had that thing for a long time, actually went out to, that's what we drove here to Maine. That was, you can see the bottom of my wife's legs there with her skirt on there, out, you know, on the passenger side of the truck. We're getting stuff out. One of the places we stayed when we came here to Maine to visit, and had that truck for a while, and then we sold it when we were here. Real good truck. But the KLR 650 was the last bike I had down in Pennsylvania, and we just realized, you know, we're not going to be able to make it, you know, bring it up here and stuff. We need the extra money, so I ended up selling it. And it was really, yeah, you always feel kind of weird. You sell a vehicle and it's like you see the guy taking it away or riding it away or whatever else, and it's like, you know. And but that KLR 650 was really hard for me to see that thing go, because I'd put a lot of work into that bike and had a lot of really good times on that motorcycle. So tough, but the Lord blessed us since then. So we were up here. When we first moved here, we had our truck, and we had actually bought this three-wheeler. It was around the same time, because we were using it to do firewood and things, and we had actually bought this. It was an actual Honda Big Red, 1985 250 Big Red, and I taught my wife how to ride on that thing. And there it is. And I did a video years ago where when we had brought it here, we had it sitting outside under a tarp, and then I'd moved it back to our property in Littleton, and it was back there with the tarp. And I'll actually show you some video here. I'll put some video in. I'll just do it this way. Now, you know what, I'm just going to play the video. I'll be back in a minute. There she goes. Across the one-lane bridge. Doing great. Taking her time, that's good. That bridge is way up there. I won't be able to film going across. We'll do it when we come back. Okay, so there's the video. My wife riding across this bridge on the ATV trail, which is right up behind our place up here. It goes down. A lot of ATV trails up here. But that thing, the stupid ethanol gas, it ate away the rubber gasket in the carburetor. And actually the carburetor leaked the one time. And I had my son in a little baby carrier on my chest, and my wife sitting on the back of the three-wheeler. And we get up there, and all of a sudden this three-wheeler just like bursts into flames. I jump off. Thankfully, my son wasn't hurt at all. And we tried to put the fire out, and the whole three-wheeler was a loss. So very sad. It was a really good condition, old Honda Big Red, all original and everything. It was really nice. I mean, some scratches and cracks and whatever, but it ran really, really good. Loved that thing. So that was a bit hard. But we're up here, and we had, again, we're back to the situation with just our Ford truck. And so it was like, okay, we really should have a secondary vehicle. And so I thought, well, what are we going to do? At the time, we didn't have our son Oliver, so I said, well, let's get another motorcycle, because I know how to work on bikes. I can fix motorcycles and everything else. So another one that was on my list was an XR 650. I like, the bigger dual sports. I had a DR 650, then a KLR 650, Suzuki, Kawasaki. I thought it'd be neat to get a Honda. Found one in southern Maine. It was in real good shape. Got a real good deal on it from a private individual. It was a guy that had gotten cancer or something, I think, and he couldn't ride anymore, so he had to sell it. And so put a little bit into it, put a luggage box on the back and that rear rack there. You can see the bike here. I had that thing, and that was our secondary machine there, and 2,500 miles on it. These are a lot of the pictures I took for selling it. And so we had that bike, and I kept that thing until I found out that my wife was with child. And so I said, well, there's no point if we're gonna be a family now, we're gonna have a little baby. Well, then there's no point really in us keeping this bike, because I pretty much, we go everywhere together and stuff. So, but before I got rid of it, this XR 650 actually has a very unique distinction from all other machines. I actually baptized that bike, by full immersion the one time. When we were going back to our property, our idiot neighbor that we used to have, he would, plow the lane in. He just would, plow all this dirt right onto our right of way going back, and there's no way to get back in there. We couldn't drive our truck back in because it's blocked off. So I had the XR 650. We had to go back to the property the one time, and so we're riding this thing, and I'm like, okay, well, we're just gonna have to go down the bank through there's a brook there, pretty good sized, and we could, I wouldn't call it a river necessarily, but it was, decent amount of water. If you've seen some of the older videos, and I'm standing there, and I'm like standing, and you can see all the water behind me. Well, that's where it was, just kind of a narrower part of that where it came through the culverts. And so I'm like, oh, not a problem. I'll just kind of ride down through there, and then we'll go up, to our property. So we did, rode up, we're riding around and stuff like that, did what we needed to do back at the property. We had to take a few things over, and turn around, come back down. I had my wife, actually it was the time we had the three-wheeler, that's right. She rode through the creek on the three-wheeler. I rode through on the XR 650, put the three-wheeler up there, put a tarp on it, riding back down through with the XR 650. And I went down through this spot, it kind of dropped in kind of weird, and I got her on the back. She's with child, Oliver's in her belly there and stuff. And I go down in there, and I just totally laid the bike over. I mean, hit a rock, and it just kind of and poof, down in. It wasn't going fast, but just, and that thing just totally under the water, and both of us along with it, and it wasn't, real deep or anything, but I got up, got the bike up out of there and stuff, pulled it up out, and then it wouldn't start, and stuff. So I finally got the thing, I pushed it out to where my neighbor's place was, and thankfully he was there and not too drunk at the time, and he had a battery charger, so we charged the battery and stuff, and I got the bike started again. But then we're riding home, and it was early spring here, and it was pretty cold. So we're riding along, and just cold again. So my wife had been through a lot with me and some of our adventures that we go on. But so we sold that, and because I thought, well, there's not really any point in having a street bike, because I'd like to take her and Oliver along with us after Oliver was born. And but we still needed a way to get back to our property. So we started looking into the thing of, okay, we lost our Honda Big Red. That was one of the ways we could get back through. And so I thought, well, okay, we'll start looking for a used four-wheeler, something that's not too expensive. And I thought, I'll get something for my wife, because by that time she had ridden, she never rode anything with a clutch or whatever else, but she was very good at riding four-wheelers and ATVs and whatever. So I thought, I'm going to look for something that she can ride, but it needs to be powerful enough that it can pull a trailer, a little utility trailer and stuff like that, so we can haul things back to our property, because we're trying to build back in there. And so I said something to her about, do you want some kind of utility ATV or whatever else? Well, no, and stuff. And so I was like, well, I'd like to get you a bigger bore type of a thing, because she has enough sense. She learned how to ride pretty quickly. And so looked about a Kawasaki KFX 700. That might seem like a lot of overkill, but my wife is actually a pretty good rider. And I'll show you a picture here actually of one. There's the one we found on Craigslist. It was down in New Hampshire. A motorcycle shop had it down there. It had been traded in. An older man had it, and he was pulling a trailer with it. And he actually, his grandson wrecked it really bad. You can see the plastics are mangled up there, and you can see the rear grab bar is bent completely up. The front bumper was just totally smashed, and it had a couple other issues with it when we first bought it. And so my wife did most of the modifications herself out there in her dress, and stuff, or kind of a work dress that she had. She's out there sitting in the yard, putting parts on it. She changed the oil and everything. I taught her how to do that. And putting the plastics back on. The one time I remember she's like putting the, tightening the bolts, and she's like really yanking on this one bolt. And I'm like, it snapped the head of the bolt off. But she's a good wife, and I fixed it and everything else. Had to drill the bolt out and everything, So, but it's a pretty big bolt too that she snapped off. It was kind of funny, but so we put some money into the thing. Didn't pay a whole lot for it because it was wrecked, but we put fixed it up and stuff enough that, because the cracked fenders and things, you'd ride it on the trails and it's just like you're getting sprayed with mud on the left side. So we used that thing quite a bit, because we could actually ride to our property on the ATV trails back here. So there were a lot of times we were not even driving our vehicles. If we had to go back and work at our property, driving a vehicle over, you'd got to park and then you got to carry everything back in. At least with our four-wheelers, we were able to ride over on the ATV trail, then go right back through and go down through the creek or out around the big piles of dirt that the stupid neighbor had there in the way. But that's what the four-wheeler looks like right now. It's actually for sale. 2005 KFX 700. We put new plastics on it and stuff like that, just simply because, like I said, you'd get sprayed with dirt if you didn't. And put Nerf bars on it simply because, again, we're not trying to make it look ultra awesome or anything, but we just put Nerf bars on because we would ride. The three of us rode on that thing quite a bit to and from the property. So it was actually more like a vehicle, and you can ride on the roads up here. Most of them, the police won't say anything. There's a lot of ATV access roads. Just show you a couple pictures of the thing. We used it for a while, and now it's our new property. We don't need it, so we're going to be selling the thing. And again, I've been doing this off and on over the years. Buying and fixing up motorcycles and ATVs, and then you sell them for a little bit of profit. So just been kind of a little sideline way to make money, and so that's what we're going to be doing with that thing. Tried to sell it right before wintertime, didn't get anybody at all interested, so probably this coming spring, when things warm up a little bit, we're going to sell it and make a little bit of money there. That'll help with ministry expenses and stuff like that, or maybe buy some other thing like that to fix it and sell it. But I mean, I'm not getting rich from it or anything else. But good four-wheeler. I remember the one little funny experience on that thing. My wife is real good riding it and stuff like that. She's never, she doesn't do any kind of stupid riding on it or anything. But we're cruising along the one time, and she's driving, and I had Oliver holding, I had him on the little baby carrier thing, strapped to my chest, and she's up front. And, because normally she would have him on her, she'd be sitting on the back, but I was like, hey, you ride home, you drive it home this time. I trust you, I'll ride on the back. So I'm sitting there like this. And we're cruising along this one spot, and it was like really bad with mosquitoes and these big horse flies. And this horse fly lands on her forehead and just, I don't know if they sting or bite or whatever they do, but the thing just nailed her right here on the forehead, and she went, ah, like that. And when she moved her hand, she hit the throttle, and we like, whoa, did this big old wheelie, and she brought the thing back down again, thankfully. But that was the only time she lost control of the thing, and it didn't result in an accident. So again, people don't think that about my wife. They probably think, she's just weird or whatever else. No, she's actually pretty good at riding ATV as well. We've gone, like I said, we put a lot of miles on that thing, go back and forth to the property, and now we don't need it, so we're going to sell it. And she'd actually like to get rid of the four-wheeler and get a four-legger eventually, a horse. So that's another thing, another issue. But the whole time she rode that thing, she never once wore pants. So those of you women out there that think, oh, you got to wear pants on occasion or whatever, well, not necessarily. My wife was able to ride that thing quite a few times with a dress on, so, and did a good job on it. So anyways, that's that thing.